This is Back to 99 talking to you live from the void. I wanted to record my thoughts about episode 7 of the final season of The Boys. I think at this part, to the season, knowing that we're at the penultimate episode and that there's only one more, I find myself in a very familiar spot as a member of, a particular audience for a TV show. I think I was very sort of naive when the Game of Thrones final season happened. And I was like, I don't know, I was probably in my 30s, but I was still like, up until that point, I never really paid a lot of attention to a series finale, or I hadn't really walked into a situation where I was hoping that the outcome would be like amazing. So I remember watching the Game of Thrones leading up to the I forget what they call the battle with the Night King. But I was like, bro, okay, like this episode, the first one sucks, this one sucks, but the battle's gonna be crazy, bro. It has to be. So then you move forward from sort of that experience and you become a little more wary about shows sticking the landing. At this point, I'm not even like outraged. I just don't expect the final season of any show to really satisfy the audience. In my estimation, of course, the actors showed up, said their lines, provided heartfelt, maybe not heartfelt, but they were game. They said, okay, producers, showrunners, Amazon, you guys sure? And maybe they gave their feedback where they could, or, stood up for certain things, or said that certain things are stupid, and obviously there could be lines that they said that they didn't agree with. But at this point, you're like, are you, where's my check? And you're going to maintain a good relationship with one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world. So even if you have ideas about your character, you're not going to lash out and say, this is stupid, So, but I think the showrunners phoned it in. Like they didn't. The show is ending, so they had a certain number of episodes. They had a budget. Now every show has a budget, but that's a whole nother conversation. But sometimes having a budget can enhance creativity or it can stymie it. In this case, all the stuff that has transpired so far this season was what everyone suspected online. That this final season was hijacked by the Vought prequel sort of a backdoor pilot scrambling to introduce these storylines so that the next season or series can get us interested in that. I spoke about this a little bit in my previous review of the last episode. Vought Rising, the prequel, I have zero interest in it because every single character every single character in it I don't care about, because I sort of met the bulk of the characters in this final season. Bombsight and Geisha, I do not care about their love. Bombsight was introduced to us as a person that's just doing heroin all the time because he's sad, I guess. I don't know. I mean, but I'm like, no. And then he lives to be old, obviously, in the new continuity timeline, and he gives up his power. I thought that was dumb. No one wants to live forever. I'm like, I don't know. As a concept, it feels like one of those things where it's like, money isn't happiness, yeah? You don't need everything to feel happy, like, so it's just one of those things. I'm like, is this just like a sort of a something people say to pacify people who don't have the option to do that? So if all the stories say, bro, you don't want to live forever, like, it'd be so horrible, you'd have to watch all your friends die, yada yada yada. And so I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, sure, that could be one way to look at it, or maybe it is fun, but we'll never know, right? But I'm just saying, like, so the characters in fiction that gripe about immortality, I always thought that was just sort of a short-sighted way to look at that, or just a one-sided way to look at that. But so he gives up his immortality, or his powers as well. And I shook my head. The geisha lady, nothing against her, nothing against the character, but they're like, she worked for Vought, and Vought used to be really heavily into pornography. Okay. Even if they put the original Black Noir in the Vought prequel, and I don't know if they are or not, his character has no point, because he, if I remember correctly, he just gets brain damage from Soldier Boy back then, and then killed by Homelander. So what am I going to learn from that? And then to sum this all up, I don't care about Stormfront when she's younger, or hiding the fact that she's a Nazi, or her and Soldier Boy's amazing love, because I don't care about Soldier Boy, because Soldier Boy, the way he was written and his actions in the show, he's being played by the Jensen Ackles, or I don't know how you say his name, but he's from Supernatural. Handsome guy, which is, trading off some of the, IRL context of Captain America being played by Chris Evans, and Chris Evans is handsome, and the whole, playing with the idea of sort of the pageantry of the perfect American soldier, the, I guess, iconography, you know. So he comes in the show, he's shit talking, he's, rough around the edges, and, maybe a little racist or maybe violent or whatever his explanations are that they give for his actions. However, every single choice he's made since he's been on screen, I've disagreed with. Him being wishy-washy with Homelander, him, the boys trying to have him kill Homelander and then Butcher changing his mind and they putting him in the tank and waking him up out of the tank and, giving Homelander the V1, walking into Homelander's office to say, hey, I'm leaving, getting put back in the tank, So I don't even care where his story goes, because however the show ends, whether he's alive or not, and if he does not live past the final episode, or if he's still in the fucking tank, or if he can still be put in the tank, like, he should never be, like, his whole priority in life should be like, no one's getting close enough to me to put me back in that fucking tank. So whatever his fate is in the context of this show, it doesn't matter, because there's no way to redeem him from how much he's pissed me off personally. So why would I care about him when he was younger? So this episode, that's a lot of like background context. This particular episode, we get some espionage stuff for reasons unknown. They say, hey, we got to go see what old father is doing. In the last episode, Huey and Starlight saw, very briefly, a wall of psychic pictures. Like, like Homelander has psychics. They go to the base, completely ignoring, this clue that they received last week, And I guess you could say, if you want to give the writers some credit, you can say it's because they were desperate, they had to go. And they didn't 100% know that the psychics would be there. Well, it turns out some of the more powerful psychics are at the compound. Butcher and Huey are detained, which allows the psychic to get the location of Frenchie and Kimiko and Sage. And then, because this is the final episode, Jeffrey Dean Morgan shows up to do sort of a cameo, where he's playing the character that he played from before. But I'm just like, we didn't really need him to come back, But they bring him back to tell this story that they've just showed us several different ways. Like, this shouldn't even be, like, the psychic taking the time to tell this story to Huey at this point in the show makes no sense, because Huey knows Butcher doesn't care about anybody. Or let's say he should know. Butcher killed the senator lady in front of her daughter. Was willing to kill the daughter and her father, who was helping to make the virus, he'll sacrifice anybody. He's trying to kill Kimiko and them by saying, "Hey, all soups got to go, even us." So for the show to take 5 minutes to tell us a story, hey, bro, did you know he led some people somewhere? Got him killed, huh? Now, if this is the first season, yeah, that's a revelation. But we're too deep into the show to even do that. And then, why not have the psychic dude show Huey someone he cared about, which could have been Simon Pegg, if Simon Pegg had the time. Obviously, time is a constraint. So this whole them getting captured thing, Starlight and Mother's Milk find themselves in a place where Mother's Milk has a chance to tell the origin story of his name. I didn't care about that. Obviously, from the actor standpoint, he gave him something to do, a little monologue, so maybe he enjoyed it or whatever from the creative standpoint. And just to be like, this show hasn't really given me a lot of moments. I had to, so he got to show some layers there. But I thought that was, unnecessary as well. They go down, they have a fight with the Wolverine guy and the cat lady. Also, this last episode that we're talking about right now, they brought in two of the Gen V actors. And you would think after having 2 seasons of Gen V, they would find a way to put those characters in this final season in a way that seemed more seamless. Whatever dialogue the 2 actresses have from Gen V in season 5 here, it seems lifeless. They're looking past the camera, as actors do. But what I'm saying is, it looks like they don't even know why they're cameoing in this. They're like zero inspiration. And I could be reading into that. It could be but I'm saying that's how it's reading to my eye in this visual medium. They just threw them in there just to say, hey, the Gen V people are here, So I wish that was, done more, more skillfully and in a way where, let's start weaving them into the entire season. But they just show up to say, what can we do? And maybe in the final episode, she'll use her powers 1-2 times, and that's it. And that's the whole entire payoff of Gen V. Seems kind of lackluster to me. So the whole Old Father plot didn't really move the narrative forward, in my opinion. All it really did was allow Homelander to find Sage, Kimiko, and Frenchie. Or just, their location, general location. So Frenchie, Kimiko, Sage, they're still at the lair trying to solve the Soldier Boy radiation blast conundrum. Like they're trying to, replicate the process so that Kimiko can do it. They're trying to get Sister Sage to help. She doesn't want to because she's sort of discouraged or sad or depressed or, all those kind of emotions. So she doesn't help until the script says, okay. And to a certain extent, we could say maybe that's realistic, right? Like, obviously in the context of the show, it takes like 10 minutes for her to agree. But in real life, maybe people don't change their minds that fast, even if they're presented with good reasons to decide that way or to take that course of action. So, of course, in screen time, script time, she says, yes, I'll help. Solves the problem pretty fast, but not fast enough because just when it's about to work, Homelander's on the way. Homelander, you could argue a couple things. Homelander, there's no way Homelander could have known that they would have a tracker on the roof to know if he could fly or not. But theoretically, he could approach the building more stealthily. But I understand you could say he's Superman. He's just going to walk in there and do whatever he wants. But if you're really trying to catch the three people, probably should sneak up on them. So he gets there. They use the, Superman can't see through lead or whatever. So they put the, Sage and Kimiko conveniently fit in this crawl space. But obviously, Frenchie does not fit. Which kind of reminded me of, it's been done in different movies and stuff, but it kind of reminded me of another show from last year that I won't spoil. But if you know, there was a certain scene where someone had to put someone in a little locker, but there wasn't enough room for both of them. So Homelander comes there. He talks to Frenchie. Frenchie turns on the uranium. It wasn't clear to me if the uranium made him bleed as much as he did, or if it was Homelander, punched him or something. But I get, but I am leaning more towards thinking that Homelander just stood there long enough to watch Frenchie get, fatally poisoned by the uranium. So this moves us to one of my favorite sort of conventions or tropes in films. I love when someone dies and someone's holding them going, no, stay with me. And not that I love it like in a morbid sense, but just the idea is that no one knows how they're going to die in real life. But if I could die, and I will die, I suppose, but I wish it could be in a situation where someone was holding me, telling me don't go into the light, and and not just someone, but like, someone I cared about or something like that, And obviously that wouldn't be great for them, but most you can die. There's a lot of different ways you can die, and some of those ways, there's nobody going to be holding you or crying for you or nothing like that. So. And I'm not an actor, but I would love to play that in a movie just so I could have, or I could see that scene with myself in there, because I might not get that in real life. So so that's kind of morbid, but so the actress that played Kimiko, she really, her mourning, her acting, to what's happening to Frenchie was really good. It showed, it really showed her range. And now you could make the criticism that anybody can cry. She cried convincingly. She, whatever she thought of to get to that place, mentally, to where she could pretend that, Frenchie is a real person, that he's dying, and that she cares about that deeply. Whatever she was thinking about, it was amazing, because there were so many. It wasn't just surface level crying, because I could, like if Mother's Milk was crying over someone, he'd maybe have a little water in his eyes, his head would shake, maybe he'd sniffle and get some snot boogers, we don't know. But she really committed to, the bit, and that kind of not really changed my mind about how I feel about the character, because I don't have anything negative about the character or the actress. But she was in her bag, as they say. It was just like, oh shit, girl. Like if you could get an Emmy for one scene, it would be this. Now, my little nitpick critique would be, I don't know what the hell Frenchie was doing as an actor when he was dying. I mean, he was just, I was like, are you dying? This don't look like you're dying, man. He was just, I don't know. But maybe he was just creating a canvas to let Kimiko cook, But I thought he could have hit a few more layers of acting to his death scene. But all in all, I don't know if I ever cared about Kimiko and Frenchie per se, like their love story or whatever. But I was in that scene. I was drawn to the humanity of it, and just the idea of, sacrifice, and what it means to love someone, and just the idea of what it means to watch the person you love die, in one afternoon, or just something happened, and it's going down like that. So I guess the last thing I will talk about, it's been a long time already, is Homelander not being willing, or being unwilling, to allow Soldier Boy to leave New York, or wherever this tower is. And at this point, we've seen it so much that I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know if I can be impacted by Anthony Starr's Homelander acting, because he plays petulant so well, So the look that he gives when Soldier Boy says, all right, I guess I am leaving then, and then he puts him in the headlock or whatever, I thought that was, a good bit of acting. And most of us, if we're ever in a situation like that where someone that we care about is like actively leaving us, most of us, we just, we have to just stay there and let it happen. And there's some people, I'm not gonna go down that dark road, but there's some people who don't do that. There's some people who lash out or whatever, but this was like sort of a safe way, for the audience to peer into some of that psychology of a person that just doesn't want to let you go. And so Homelander has the power to do that against the person he's trying to keep's will, and so there's some interesting psychology there, because he's like, well, I don't want you to go, you want to go, I'll just put you back in your cage and I'll just look at you. So, that's like the height of sort of insanity, because that person doesn't care about you or want to be around you, but you're just like, no, I wanna possess you at that level. So going into next week, the final episode, I guess they're playing the final episode at the movie theaters. I thought about going, but then I was like, I don't even know. I don't know what kind of crowd. I mean, it's not going to be too much of a crowd, but if anybody's that fucking diehard to go watch The Boys in the theater, I don't want to meet them, So I'm probably going to watch it from the safety of my living room. But for the most part, I appreciate you guys. And back to now.